Hello and welcome to Unboxed, the podcast that dives deep into the world of custom packaging and innovative brand experiences. In each episode, we'll be exploring the latest trends, innovations, and best practices in the design and packing industry, and then taking a look at how they can help businesses like yours to create memorable and impactful brand experiences. I'm your host, Sam Johnston. Let's get started. I'm your host, Sam Johnston, and in this episode, we'll be talking to Kathy Reeder, who's here today, a medical cannabis educator at CannaTracker, where she's helping lots of other people to navigate the cannabis landscape through business consults, education, and a lot of thought leadership. We're really excited to have you here. Thanks for giving us the time. Great to have you, Kathy.
Absolutely. Thanks, Samuel. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Fantastic. Well, as always, we're going to go through a set of 5 core questions. So if it's your first time listening, we're going to run through those questions in a second. For those of you that are coming back, if you wanted to jump to one of those specific ones to get Kathy's insights on that question, they'll be chaptered in the show notes below as well, so you can see that, and it might as well be snipped out into YouTube, into channels. But the first one that we're going to go through would be what inspired our guests today to go through their industry, get into the position that they're in, and what involvement do they have within branding, packaging, and what exposure do they have to the product industry. The next one will be all about their in their experience and in their kind of movements in the market. How do custom packaging and brand experiences contribute to creating loyal customer bases? What maybe are some of those most effective strategies they've seen out there in the wild for achieving that? The third one's going to be any insights, success stories, maybe some case studies of businesses that they've seen that have transformed their brand through packaging and design exercises. Then we'll move on to what are some of the biggest challenges or roadblocks that business owners like yourselves listening might face when it comes to packaging, branding, and those brand experiences, and how might you overcome them ahead of schedule. And the last one, we'll take out the crystal ball and have a look at the future here if we can, what's coming in the next 5 to 10 years, and what could businesses like you guys listening today do to stay ahead of the curve. So we'll work all the way back here, right up to the beginning. And Kathy, great to have you here. What inspired you to get into the industry that you're in, and what involvement do you have with branding, packaging, and products in general?
Yeah, so I started in printing right out of college. Didn't even go to school for it, but I ended up kind of there. And so I worked within the book component print industry for 12 years and totally fell in love with printing, with everything about it. Huge fan of Pantone books, which is very like print nerdy, but I love them. I love the color of the year every year. And it really has set a tone for me for business and moving forward with looking at things and seeing print register and the quality. And it's such a dynamic industry that's always moving and on your feet. And for me, historically, I'd come from, like through college, like most college kids, you work in the restaurant, and going from restaurant work into print was easy because it was their hair on fire every day. There's always something going on. And then moving forward into cannabis, it's all like within that same mindset. So
Nice.
I love the print industry. I went from that for branding wise, my husband and I own and operated a barbecue restaurant
Oh,
for
wow.
15 years. And yeah, so we did that, which really kind of carved out my niche in learning branding and branding not only the restaurant, but he did competitive barbecue also. So for KCBS, and so I branded his barbecue, and then we sold the packages and all of that.
Wow.
Yeah, through COVID, the restaurant did not survive. So I was already halfway through University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, where I got a Master's of Science in Medical Cannabis Science and Therapeutics. I was the first in the nation in a class of 150 graduating.
Wow.
And yeah,
That's amazing.
so I was already into that segment, and kind of took all that print knowledge, all that branding knowledge, and then taking care of all the inventory for dispensary. I started working there. And then that was really kind of where it all came together. So getting my hands on that different type of packaging every single day and seeing all the different nuances and the changes and the good things and the bad things,
Yeah.
and it really gave me a flavor of how much improvement could be there and really like some really cool ideas that were there as well. So kind of through all of that, I ended up going back into print for a pressure sensitive label manufacturer, Hub Labels here in Hagerstown, Maryland, and kind of brought the packaging together with getting them to understand labeling and how um, moving target the cannabis market really is on a lot of
Hmm.
levels. And then I left from there to take a break and just doing consulting work. So, kind of doing educational consulting and business consulting and then bringing it all together.
Fantastic. I mean, you've got a lot of experience there in lots of different industries, but it all kind of seems to fall back onto that there is a product, there's a brand behind it, and that needs to be shared with the general market. And even from an educational perspective on the medical cannabis side, so many different regulations, so many different kind of industry niches there. I'm really excited because I think that the listeners are going to get some absolute gold from these next couple of questions. And I'm slightly jealous that we didn't do this in person because I'm a big barbecue lover and maybe there would have been some snacks, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, on to the next question here, which is in
Sure.
your experience, which is vast, there's amazing amount of experience there. How does custom packaging and product brand experiences contribute to creating loyal customer bases? And what are some of the most effective strategies you've seen for achieving this?
So I really feel like you need to kind of start with, particularly as a business, like defining who you are and really digging down and I'm a huge advocate for like do not work with anybody until you figure this out. Like sit down, know your ethos, know your culture, and if you don't have it, what do you want it to look like? Even mood board that kind of out and
Hmm.
get some visuals going. Making sure that you know what what you stand for and what you stand against and what you stand for. So like, for packaging, is it sustainability? Is it, ease of opening for patients, right? So there's all kinds of things you have to know where your value lies as a company, because you're going to take all of that, in my experience, and then kind of use it to tell that story of who you are through a package
Hmm.
and through that. So when somebody picks up, right, like in cannabis, a jar of flour, they're seeing this flower, but they're also like you're creating an experience for that person to understand solely, even if they don't know anything about your grow, that they know what you represent just by that package. And there's
Yeah,
so much you can tell in stories within that. It's almost like the packaging, as they say, is like the first handshake in a relationship with your customer. So make sure that that is a trustful one and a really like impact where it wows them.
yeah,
Um, Doing things that are personalized, creating a brand that they're going to be able to trust. And that all tells with like being a good storyteller.
100%. And I think that a lot of founders they are themselves, right? So yeah, they like to think that they know what they're about and what they stand for and kind of what their persona is in the market. But actually getting that across when you're not in the room is quite difficult. And you might have other team members, even if it's a small team to begin with, and maybe everybody is bringing something slightly different to the table, and then suddenly you have this group persona and this group brand that you're trying to represent out there. So if it's you or if it's a group of people, getting it down on paper, if it's on a Miro digital whiteboard, if it's on an actual physical whiteboard, wherever it is, really nailing those things about who are we, what do we stand for, that allows you to then go and identify who is this ideal customer profile that matches this. Who do we reflect in the marketplace? They're going to be our early adopters. And more often than not, there is that kind of core early adopter market, that group of people that maybe are open for trying new things. They mirror your ethos, your brand, what you stand for, and they're looking for something like you. So when they walk down the aisle or go online or they see an advertisement or they get a referral from a friend, they immediately see themselves. And it's just there's an intuitive link
Mhm.
there that you can jump into. Then outside of that, you kind of step into the people that are influenced by them, and then eventually into people that kind of just come along for the ride because everyone else is doing it, so it must be good, and then they get to see all the benefits later on. But that initial founding part, you're so right, is so key, and you've done that across lots of different industries. Um, what are some of the pitfalls, that you've seen organizations falling into and doing things wrong along that journey?
I think just kind of like having that disconnect, not putting that time into figuring out who you are and how you want to convey that story. And so, like if you're the materials that you choose, right? The special effects, the emboss and the foil and all of this, if you are a top brand premium cannabis, style flower jar, then you want that jar to reflect that. You're
Hmm.
not using plastic, you're not using, regular bop material on your labels. So, like plastic, right? So
Yeah,
plastic you want to be able to even show like through your actions, not as much words, right? Because of course, with the package, you're not in front of people, so that package is you. But then when they kind of like you're saying with other people, if you want them to represent, they need to be able to see you in action too, right?
yeah,
So, like you take a company like Wild, for example, in the cannabis market. Um, they're very clear. They're about sustainability, they're about environment, doing good things, but then you also see them doing volunteer work. They pay their employees for volunteer work. So there's so many components that the story is told. So when you pick up that packaging and you're opening it because it's like origami
yeah.
and you unfold the whole thing and there's a story to be told on the inside, on the outside, everywhere on that package. They do it well.
100%. There's that sort of multi-sensory, unspoken alignment of the brand that comes through product, which is so unique compared to most other channels where you're interacting with a consumer. There's that kind of the things that you don't notice also contribute to the brand. If I pick up something and it immediately feels like the quality, or immediately feels maybe it is a little bit rougher, maybe it's not quite as of a smooth experience, but that automatically links with this. But this is renewable. This is doing what I want it to do. There's an intuitive feeling that a customer can get from that that's almost hard to put down on words. Smarter people than me, I'm sure, have written books on that side of things. But it leads us nicely on to this next question, which is, can you share any success stories or case studies of businesses that have transformed their brand through custom packaging or design experiences?
I think for me, and just because I'm very hippie, I always go to my favorite, which is Garcia Handpicked. If you're familiar with the brand, they nailed their packaging. Their first wave, when they initially came out, particularly in the Maryland market, I know that each market, I think they did their packaging just a little bit different. But in the Maryland market, it came out, it was tactile, it was direct print to a glass jar. So you've got premium flour. So it's in a nice heavy glass jar. The jar is reusable. They had tie-dye on the lid of it.
Nice.
It was, yeah, the direct to print had some it was like a raised direct to print. So you had that. So every time you open that flour jar, like you had that feeling to it. That was inside of a box. The box told a story on the side. Each strain had a different set list compared. So you could pick up a strain and then you had a set list for Grateful Dead songs that you could go
Nice.
and then listen to. They incorporated, of course, Jerry Garcia is very famous for missing part of the tip of his finger. So they incorporated that within the logo. Their edibles are shaped like a guitar pick. Like it just kind of goes on and on and on. But 100%, I mean, they nailed it on, in my opinion, like on every level. The jars were almost like a collector's item, right? So
Yeah.
then you have people doing it like I literally have them on my desk. I have paper clips in one, right? So
Yeah.
there's ways, and they encourage that because that's part of, the culture of the dead is, the environmentalism and the activism and just they. they nailed it. You know, they did a really great job. It was and is an experience, and in my mind, that's a win. Like if it's not transactional, when you get your customer to experience your brand in your hand, then you nailed it.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
it's one. Yeah.
Yeah, if your product becomes like a collectible almost, that's the
Hmm.
highest level. Well, right there, people are keeping the boxes and they're keeping the stuff because they're so connected to it. I mean, that's super impressive. But even on a lower scale, there's brands all the way back to like the Great Depression where they realized that they could be creating multi-use packaging where we can put patents onto some of the flower bags that we were sending out so that mothers could and families could create clothing for children because it was necessary, and all the way through to today where we recently had a guest on the show who was creating multi-sensory toys for children, but the boxes that they came in, they suddenly realized actually the mums really love the boxes, and these were really,
Hmm.
they really put a lot of time and effort and consideration into that because the box was something that the parents wanted to put on display and wanted to keep. And suddenly having this kind of collection of the boxes alone became a thing. So I think whatever brand you're in, that there is an angle to this that you can probably bring to play, but not even if it's not quite a collectible at the same level as what you're talking about here, Kathy, but something that's very achievable for every brand to create the packaging into something that can be kept and cherished and enjoyed.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's even like creative ways, like at Hub Labels, they have what is known as a stick around label, or they've coined it as a stick around label. And so it's a label within a label. And so one of the beer companies here in Maryland, RER Brewing, they utilize this technology and it allows them, so they put the beer label on the can, but that label then has their logo that you can peel off. And then
Nice.
so now that consumer can walk away, recycle that beer can, peel that off, and put it on their cooler. So
Yeah.
now their brand and their logo lives many lives beyond that single can. And
I'm,
to me,
that's
super
great.
smart.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for that. I love a good sticker. If you're going to send me
Yeah.
anything, got to put a sticker in the box. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, the next question here is kind of on the flip side, I guess. So we've talked about some of the amazing things that people could be doing, our listeners could be doing, and what's happening out there in the market. Let's take a look at what are some of the biggest challenges or roadblocks that
Mhm.
businesses face when it comes to packaging and even just branding and these kind of product to brand experiences. How might our listeners overcome them ahead of schedule?
I would have to say for sure. I mean, cost is always a huge hurdle, right? And balancing that cost to quality to ROI. So that is always a dance, that can be a challenge. Um, I feel like, particularly in cannabis, consistent sourcing is always a hurdle and a roadblock. Just like you feel like you've gotten something, then you either have supply chain issues or they stopped making it or the business went out of business, right?
Yeah.
So consistency on sourcing is always a hurdle to get over. Um, and I feel like carving out a niche and standing out can be a hurdle as well. So I feel like sometimes getting over some of those things on the cost and you know, packaging and all of that, it's almost like kind of going back and again doing that homework up front. Who are you and what's important to you? You go back to that and you go, okay, what do we really want to speak and what's our core values and what are non-negotiables? And if that's sustainability, then you start there and you stick there and you create those boundaries and you say, this is what we're going to do. And it gives you a focus that if you need to redirect and find a different source for something, then you already know a criteria of what you're looking for. Because otherwise, I feel like you get lost in a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Um, and so with that, I feel consistent sourcing, can even be buying multiple containers and doing those, whether you do direct to print, say, or whatever it is, and then for cannabis specific, do strain specific with just a small label. So you can bulk buy for
Mhm.
cost savings in large quantities of like common things, and then think outside the box on how you can use them. So you could use um, they even have home compostable drams that some clients use. And so you could put the drams in there, you can put vape carts down in a pre-roll tube in addition to pre-rolls. So you're multifunctioning. So like you really kind of have to think outside the box, I feel, on what that package is and what can you put in it except for the expected.
Yeah.
Um, and and I think for setting the pace and standing out, some ways to kind of get around that. I feel in those non-negotiables is sometimes, like for our restaurant, we did not want to use styrofoam. We were all about, going back to the hippie thing. So we were all about environment and doing right by sending the amount of boxes out the door. So we just decided ourselves we are not going, we got rid of all styrofoam. We were way ahead of the curve in the state of Maryland. They mandated it like 8 years after we decided. So we got rid of all of it. We stuck with an eco-friendly box. It was a home compostable, corn-based, but that was a choice that we wanted to make, and that was a story to tell. So as people left and they had our brand sticker on top of that box and they knew what we were about, right?
Smart.
And so sometimes you just have to be willing to like put that flag on that hill that you're ready to die on and then stay there and like unwavering because it will tell that story that you are committed to certain functions. And
Yep.
sometimes you just kind of have to roll with the punches, right?
I
When
love that.
figuring out the dynamics around it.
That's yeah, it's really, really smart. And things move pretty quickly in the market. It feels like the cycle of change is speeding up continuously. But what do you see as the future of custom packaging, of these types of brand experiences? How do you see them evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? And what could the listener be doing today to stay ahead of all those curves?
I think smart packaging in the sense of definitely using QR codes. A lot of people are using those now, but getting creative on how you're using that QR. So you could dip it to a landing page that talks about that particular flower, right? Or that particular product. It could be NFC chips and RFID chips, of as far as NFC chips for the customer and then RFID for internal purposes, inventory, moving around, making sure that you know exactly what's going in and it's a good second check for everything. Counterfeiting and fraud labeling is definitely, you see knockoff cannabis now in the marketplace. And for some brands, find a way to make sure that your brand is labeled as you and that it's authentic.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like definitely sustainable, ultra sustainable could be home composting. I'm a huge proponent of packaging that can be not only, you see composted, but to go to that commercial facility. I think there's like 9 in the nation, if I'm correct. And
Well,
it's,
mhm.
there's just not around, right? So you have to be able to find some things that kind of, again, match your ethos. I think sometimes even just simplicity, like a stripped down version of so much that on the packaging, just eliminating some stuff. And sometimes it's just as simple as that, just to stand out too
Yeah,
in all of the noise that is around. Um, and I think interactive packaging, like 19 Crimes does a good job with that on their wines, right? So,
yeah.
you throw up the app and then your label comes to life and it's telling the story and everything. So I would love to see some interactive packaging. I know some companies in Maryland, I believe it's nationwide, Lucid ID is a company that will help have that interaction between customer and product and then telling the story or the backstory behind the products too. And they use QR codes to do that. Um, so I think that they're just some of the things I would love to see. And I think the trends now are kind of pointing in that direction, aside from cannabis across the marketplace in general, right?
Yeah. And I think that those interactive types of brand experiences. The beverage market has done really well in adopting a lot of that, and maybe it's a slightly higher price point. It's a bit more of a perceived luxury purchase, and there's more of an entertainment value that comes from it. So people kind of are used to and are demanding that. But there's a lot that can be done in other industries as well. And I know the team at Merchant Boxes that sponsor the show here. Um, they've got this network of providers that they bring to
Mhm.
bear as and when there's kind of a necessity for it. Sometimes it's not necessarily, and maybe other areas are, but if it is, I'm sure the guys at Merchant Boxes would be more than happy to point people in the right direction as well to find the right supplier to do some of that really cool, innovative stuff. But you've given some absolute gold here, Kathy. Brought from lots of different areas of the industry, and you've got a really deep understanding of the packaging market and the print market in general. So thank you so much for giving the time today. It's been really, really valuable for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks
Uh,
for having me.
yeah, and if somebody wanted to stay in touch or wanted to reach out, maybe what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably just through email, or even actually Instagram's probably the easiest.
Yeah.
So, and it's just CannaTracker is straight on Instagram, so you can find me there.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure that in post-production, the team can add that into the description as well. So it's clickable so you can jump on there and follow.
Yep.
But that is it for this episode of Unboxed. And thank you to Kathy for sharing the insights and all of the expertise that she's done with us today. If you've enjoyed this episode as a listener, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review wherever you're listening to this. It means a lot to us and all of the algorithm robot overlords that control things. If you have any questions or comments, maybe suggestions, or you want to be on the show moving forward, you can email us at hello@merchantboxes.com. And until next time, keep thinking outside the box and creating unforgettable brand experiences. Bye. Thank you for listening to today's episode. It was sponsored by Merchant Boxes. Merchant Boxes provide custom packaging to large businesses and small creators that customers love. If you are looking for award-winning custom package designs that make your business and products stand out from the competition, click the link in the show notes to find out more.